Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Chambisham Padpanam Singari Parirachika Chara Shtotra Shatis Divine Grace of Bhachan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Jai, PBD founder Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantara Chima Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Nitakola Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading 2nd canto, 3rd chapter, text 2 to 7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, just read once the verses 2 to 7. Brahma vachasa kamastu yacheta brahmanaha patim indram indriya kamastu prachakama prachapatin divim mayam tushi kamas tejaskamo vipavasam vasukamo vasun rudran viryakamo taviryavan Annadya kamastu adittim svarga kamodite sutan vishvan devan rachakamaha sadyan samsaraka visham ayustkamo shvino deva pushtikama ilam yachat pratishta kama purusho rodasi lokamatara rupabhikamo gandharvan strikamo apsaravarvashim adipatya kama sarvisham yachetta parameshtinam Yaknyam yachat yashaskama koshakama prachettasam vidyakamastu girisham dampatyata umam satim. Translation and purport with divine grace of Bhachan and the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. One who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma, or Brihaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king Indra, and one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishvadeva. And one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Ashwini Kumaras, and a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet, and one who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvashi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva, and if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. Purport. There are different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular subjects. The conditioned soul living within the purview of the material world cannot be an expert in every type of materially enjoyable asset, but one can have considerable influence over a particular matter by worshipping a particular demigod, as mentioned above. Ravana was made a very powerful man by worshipping Lord Shiva, and he used to offer severed heads to please Lord Shiva. He became so powerful by the grace of Lord Shiva that all the demigods were afraid of him, until he at last challenged the personality of Godhead Sri Ramachandra and thus ruined himself. In other words, all such persons who aspire after gaining some or all of the material objects of enjoyment, or the gross materialistic persons, are on the whole less intelligent, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.20. It is said there that those who are bereft of all good sense, or those whose intelligence is withdrawn by the deluding energy of Maya, aspire to achieve all sorts of material enjoyment in life by pleasing the various demigods, or by advancing in material civilization under the heading of scientific progress. The real problem of life in the material world is to solve the question of birth, death, old age and disease. No one wants to change his birthright, no one wants to meet death, and no one wants to be old or invalid, and no one wants diseases. But these problems are solved neither by the grace of any demigod, nor by the so-called advancement of material science. In the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, such less intelligent persons have been described as devoid of all good sense. Shukadeva Goswami said that out of the 8.4 million species of living entities, the human form of life is rare and valuable, and out of those rare human beings, those who are conscious of the material problems are rarer still. And the still more rare persons are those who are conscious of the value of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which contains the messages of the Lord and His pure devotees. Death is inevitable for everyone, intelligent or foolish. But Parikshit Maharaj has been addressed by the Goswami as the Manishi, or the man of highly developed mind. And because at the time of death he left all material enjoyment and completely surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord by hearing his messages from the right person, Shukadeva Goswami. But aspirations for material enjoyment by endeavoring persons are condemned. Such aspirations are something like the intoxication of the degraded human society. Intelligent persons should try to avoid these aspirations and seek instead the permanent life by returning home, back to Godhead. Amagranatimrandasya grananchana jalakaya chakshuran militam yena tasma shri gurave namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupagadam Ayam Darati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Barkalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahakana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalida Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Kopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhano Satidevi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpadurabhashta Kripa Sindhyavevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhano Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Thank you for those who are hearing on Maya Prothavi. And so, yeah, today we are reading 6 verses after having started the chapter yesterday. Chapter Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. So, and this very pure devotional service was well established at the end of the previous chapter by Shukadeva Goswami as being, after previously had described for those who are very much attached to material enjoyment, that they can also somehow relate to the Lord in the form of the Vishvarupa, and then obviously the previous chapter was called The Lord in the Heart. So then for those the yogis who want to meditate on the Supersoul within themselves. But then he established at the end that, pure devotional service is ultimately the only means that all the other paths can indirectly, slowly lead to if they are successful. And especially, of course, he stressed on hearing again of the glories of the Lord. And as Maharaj Parikshit had specifically inquired about one who is on the threshold of death, what is his duty? And there Shukadeva Goswami concluded the chapter by saying that, the duty of an intelligent person is to hear of the Lord, to engage in devotional service. And so, or rather, that's on the first verse, yesterday's verse, where he again repeated that. There he summarized saying that, Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. So, making the point again, so what I told you now at the end, that is especially the duty of any intelligent man. And this Manishin is also mentioned in the purport by Prabhupada in today's verse. Manishi, or the man of highly developed mind. As we heard yesterday, that because mana means mind and Isha controller, so one who is able to control his mind is actually intelligent and will submit his mind to hearing the glories of the Lord. And so, but now in today's verses, it starts off the first line with Brahma Varchasa Kamas Tu. Tu meaning, here in word to word, Prabhupada says, but one who desires in that way. So, and then all those verses follow, which mean that Shukadeva Goswami, having very well established Bhakti Yoga as actually the only thing that anyone who is little intelligent should do, he now today listed all those other demigods that specifically can be worshipped for specific desires, material desires, of course, to be fulfilled. And that's how he tells that, I told you what you should actually do, but if you're so foolish and want to enjoy that, then Srimad Bhagavatam is even merciful in that way. It gives also all the details, at least on a general level, of how to fulfill the different material desires. But of course, then we know that actually Srimad Bhagavatam only talks about pure devotional service. So that might seem a bit confusing. Then why is he even telling these? And so I was thinking. So one point for that is also that, we heard just previously specifically for one who is on the verge of death, so that he should give up everything and fully devote himself to hear the glories of the Lord. But people in general, some of them might think, that sounds good. Then ultimately, if they know, have some knowledge of, I am spirit soul and I'm supposed to go back to Godhead at the end, but meanwhile, I'm the material world, meanwhile, I want to enjoy a bit, so they might think, that I can do, then yes, at the verge of death, but think that they have a good span of life which they want to use in fulfilling their material desires. So, from that perspective, you can look, he gives that. But also, I was thinking that in order to establish the superiority of pure devotional service even more, it's also a means by telling all those other desires that showing, okay, yeah, see, all that is available actually here in the material world, but as he told before, and as he will, as we go on in Srimad Bhagavatam, tell further, is that that is completely insignificant, those kinds of desires, in comparison to the bliss that you get from pleasing the Supreme Lord by engaging in devotional service. And especially for like us Kali Yuga residents, where we are even ignorant of any higher material aspirations. So like most people, like including myself, obviously coming from the West, we didn't even know about demigods or about like life on other planets, higher standard of material enjoyment. So even for that, it helps us even more that, okay, understanding that actually like what I am desiring, or was desiring before coming to Krishna consciousness is so insignificant and so miserly. And then understanding, okay, if even all this much higher standard of material enjoyment is still in no comparison at all to Bhakti Yoga, then okay, yeah, maybe I should really take it seriously, this Bhakti Yoga. And another point I was thinking is that it can help us is if we hear all those many different desires, how they can be fulfilled, can also to make us introspect of, yeah, because we may think ourselves, okay, actually I'm pretty much desireless, at least nothing big. I want to become a pure devotee, and that's it. But yeah, if we hear of these, we may also think about, okay, maybe when we hear of the desires, yeah, maybe actually I would have some desire for that. It would be kind of nice, this and that. And in that way, then we can remind ourselves a bit more of, okay, yes, I'm not at all pure yet, and Gopinath, please, I want to take shelter just of you. I have all these other desires. I still want to think myself as the enjoyer, as the controller, rather than being surrendered at your lotus feet. But I understand by your mercy, by the mercy of your devotees, that actually that is just foolish and to desire in any other way other than to please you. So please help me to desire only that. And so I'm briefly looking through the purport. So Prabhupada started off with telling, so there are different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular subjects. So showing also that, it's the mercy of Krishna to, everyone came to this material world with, his undue desire to, not wanting to serve Krishna, but to enjoy separately, to lord over material nature. And that can be done in so many different ways, levels of degradation, and so rather than doing it in a completely degraded way, like we see it out today, obviously here in Kali Yuga, the Lord gives, through the Vedas, all this huge stock of knowledge of how for all different, we know there's the three modes of nature, and so many combinations of those, of how the different living entities are in their material conditioning, and so that's how they desire and how they work and everything. And so Krishna gives us the knowledge then that at least, okay, you do desire this and you are not ready to surrender yet, so at least do it in a bit more, in a better way, namely at least follow some submit yourself to some authority, follow the Vedas in some way. So that's why he's giving all of that. And we hear, like, then Prabhupada further gives the example of Ravana, of someone who worshipped Lord Shiva. And obviously that's, in the verse actually we hear, it's interesting that it's said that if one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. Which, yeah, mostly we hear from the pastimes that actually, because Lord Shiva, he's very merciful in, like, gets pleased easily, and he reaches out, is ready to accept the worship of the most fallen, like especially also of all the demons and so on. And so generally, like in case of Ravana, their motive is not to just knowledge, but usually they have some crazy desires. And so that we hear also here that the mode of worship of Ravana. So that was obviously mode of ignorance. That Prabhupada says here that he used to offer severed heads to please Lord Shiva. But still, Lord Shiva became pleased, and so he became so powerful that all the demigods were afraid of him, until he, as you know, ultimately was killed by Lord Ramachandra. And then next point Srila Prabhupada makes is quoting Bhagavad Gita 7:20, that all those who do desire materially, and that their intelligence is actually completely taken away. Their knowledge they're deprived of knowledge by those very material desires. And because of that only, then they worship the demigods. And to get those desires fulfilled, and for that they are ready to follow, but at least that level is there. So we hear that for that they are ready to follow the rules and regulations for that worship, which nowadays we don't see. But so that's at least this level which through karma kanda purifies the people a little bit and gives them some benefit of then eventually being able to surrender to Krishna through the Varnashram Dharma system. But still Prabhupada hits then on the point that actually even those, they're bereft of all good sense, because desiring materially and not wanting to engage in devotional service is actually is crazy. It can never give actual fulfillment, that it's always temporary, it's always filled with misery, as we know. And Prabhupada says that and so previously it was with demigods, and now he says nowadays it's people try that by advancing in material civilization under the heading of scientific progress. So demigods nowadays are, so to say, the scientists that people think, they can give us the ultimate benefit. They can find a way that we don't have to die, or at least better and better lifespan and health and facilities for enjoyment. But slowly, I guess nowadays to see that there is quite a big limit on our so-called advancement. Then Prabhupada concludes that Maharaj Parikshit is not one of those, but he's Manisha, the man of highly developed mind, and because of that he simply wanted to hear the glories of the Lord, which is the only way to for human society also to be peaceful and to attain perfection. And I was thinking I'll just briefly go through a few of the examples of this verse, of what people whom they have to worship to get their material desires fulfilled from Shastra, and what was the outcome of these. So first, what's mentioned in the verse is that those who so one who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma or Brihaspati, the learned priest. So for impersonalists, obviously we know so many examples. So generally, it's interesting that here it's mentioned Lord Brahma or Brihaspati that should be worshipped for that, because generally, like Mayavadis, they simply worship the impersonal Brahman directly, generally, and other proper impersonalists like the four Kumaras or Shukadeva Goswami, they also worship the simply the impersonal aspect of the Lord, but they don't deride the Lord directly. They simply don't have the knowledge of his personal aspect sufficiently. So that's these famous examples of the four Kumaras and Shukadeva Goswamis, where we know that when they then learned about the Lord, in case of Shukadeva Goswami himself, when he heard those famous verses of describing the Krishna's mercy to Putana, and in case of the four Kumaras, when they were smelling the fragrance of the tulsi leaves at the lotus feet of the Lord, that they got immediately, because they were already very self-realized, pure, so they immediately got attracted and became pure devotees immediately. And also another example is that of Bilva Mangal Thakur. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that he was also on the path of monism, and he tells a nice verse of him is quoted several times during this connection when Mahaprabhu always discusses of bhakti being superior to the impersonal aspect. And so Bilva Mangal Thakur says something like that although I was being worshipped on the path of monism, that this cowherd boy playing on his flute has made me his maidservant, or forceful or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's very sweet. And then the second example that's told in the verse is that of desiring. In the translation, Prabhupada says one who desires powerful sex should worship the Heavenly King, and word to word it's simply in general indriya kama, to one who desires strong sense organs. But obviously we know the how do you say, most I can't tell the right word now, but so the most intense form of enjoying the senses is this. So for that you should worship Indra, it said here. And so examples from the Shastra were of those who desired in such a way to enjoy materially. We know in Bhagavatam of Pururava, who got mad and after Urvashi until and tried everything to retain her. And we know with the story that she left him because he had set those conditions which he could not fulfill. And after that, and he still tried to search everywhere and worship in different ways. And but ultimately he realized then also that that is not the way. And similarly, Yayati, who even took prolonged his own lifespan of a young man by taking it from one of his sons, but still, then finally, after all those many years of material sense gratification, he also realized the futility of it and told to his wife this famous verse of Matra Swasra tu hitra va na vivikta sanopavet in Balavan Indriya Kramo Vidvamsam Apikashate. So where he tells that you should not go to a secluded place, even with your mother, your sister, or your daughter. Why is that? Because those indriya gramaha, the senses, are so powerful that even they attract even a learned man. Similar, like Krishna also tells in Bhagavad Gita that even a learned man, his senses can easily get pulled away. So that is simply learned. Being learned is not enough, as we know. It's only by surrender unto Krishna possible to actually fully have controlled senses. Because by our own power, as from so many examples we know, it's not possible to control the senses. Rather, Krishna has to take control of us by taking us under the shelter of his spiritual energy. And so then another example is that of wanting to have good progeny, to worship the Prajapatis. For that famous example from Bhagavatam, we know of Chitraketu Maharaj, who so desperately wanted to get one son at least, to obviously as a great king, especially that's a very common desire, and also like justified desire to have a good son who is then the prince and can continue the kingdom, to rule the kingdom. But yeah, somehow destiny didn't want to allow him. So we know he even went to the extent of having 10 million wives and still not being able to get a son until then. Narad Muni's friend Angira Rishi came, and knowing that, like Narad Muni knew at that time he was not ready to hear spiritual knowledge, so thus he sent Angira Rishi to give him the benediction then that he wanted to get a son, but already upfront told him that this son will be Harsha Shoka. He will give you Harsha and enjoyment, happiness, and also Shoka, lamentation. But Chitraketu Maharaj didn't even properly hear that, he ignored it, and then we know the story that eventually this very son who gave him and his wife so much joy was poisoned by the other wives that he had neglected. That after that, having just spent the time with his son and his wife, but then by the mercy of Narad Muni, he brought back this son, and Narad Muni preached to Chitraketu as well as his own son, and then as we know, then we worship Lord Sankarshan and attain perfection. Then in the traveling in the heavenly planets and singing the glories of the Lord, and then getting cursed by Lord Shiva's wife Parvati, and then taking birth of Vitrasura, and from there going back to Godhead. So, and of course Daksha himself is also a funny example in terms of desiring good progeny, and not always, although he is famous as this Prajapati, who is most successful in producing good progeny, but initially there he also had Narad Muni in interfering by preaching to his first and second batch of sons and making them all take sannyas and just engaging in devotional service and getting liberated. And in terms of desiring good fortune in the material world, of worshipping Durga Devi, there's the example of worshippers of Durga or Kali in that case. We know of the Dacoit who, for that purpose, took Jat Bharat, who was Bharat Maharaj in his previous first life, and then taking birth as a deer, and then as a Brahmana, where he, as we know, he acted in a way that not to associated with any of the materialistic persons, and for that purpose he acted dumb and as if he would be dumb and deaf and everything, and that's why then those Dacoits were thinking that seeing him in this condition, they thought that he's a man animal, and that is exactly what they were looking for to offer to Kali, and then they got. But obviously Kali, knowing that Chadabharat is a great devotee, she couldn't tolerate that, and rather than them chopping off his head, she chopped off all their heads, and with her associates, danced, and they're drinking the blood and everything. So that's of course a bit extreme example of what worshipping demigods for material desires can bring, but and then in terms of long lifespan, to worship the Ashwini Kumaras, we have the example of he was not direct worshipping, but of the Ashwini Kumaras is giving this. We have the example of Jyavana Muni and Sukanya, who, like the Muni, he was meditating there in the forest, and one day the king was going in with his entourage and also with his daughter there in the forest, King Saryati, and Sukanya, his daughter, saw something glowing in the earth and poked in, and which turned out to have been the eyes of the rishi of Jyavana Muni, and so she got cursed, and then to resolve that, the king had to give her to be married by Jyavana Muni, and then to fulfill the desire of her not, or rather, sorry, I forgot the exact details chronologically how it went, but eventually Jyavana Muni was given a completely young, beautiful body, because actually he had such a old and body, wrinkled skin and long hair and everything. So for a young woman, of course, very austere to have such a husband. And so the Ashwini Kumars came and gave him a new body. And then as an example of someone wanting to dominate over others, worshipping Lord Brahma for that purpose. Obviously, Hiranyakashipu is a famous example for that. That he not only wanted that, he wanted to be immortal, of course, but that included that he did get it actually by worshipping Lord Brahma, that he ruled the whole universe. And then another example of, or rather, not a material example, but of someone worshipping goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva, for getting a good husband, is obviously on a spiritual level. We know that even the gopis did that, and praying to goddess Uma to get Krishna as their husband, which he fulfilled then by stealing the garments. And and then finally, thinking that on the point that, so we understand that Krishna is so merciful that although, first of all, we are the ones who rejected him, who rejected his love, wanting to imitate him, being envious of him being the enjoyer, and thus coming to the material world, and where he gives us all those facilities to try to enjoy matter in so many ways, and then he also even gives us, as we hear from today's verses, the prescription, how you can fulfill this desire, that desire, which is every single desire is actually undue. It's not right that we desire anything else other than Krishna, other than pleasing Krishna, but still he gives, and but still, Krishna, he gives all of that, but he, like in Bhagavad Gita, he also then tells clearly the knowledge so beautifully to Arjuna and thus to all of us, that actually, if you really want to be happy, you just have to surrender unto me, give up all the other things. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. And then I'll take care of you. I'll eradicate all the sinful reactions. Don't worry, don't fear. But still, he leaves us with this tiny independence that we have, that okay, it's up to us to surrender to him. So that's the mercy of Krishna, which is already inconceivable and amazing. But even more than that, as we know, and now we're hearing every evening those amazing classes of Ganeshambhu on Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there we heard that Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani, coming as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is even more merciful. Because in that mood of the loving mother, he cannot bear seeing the suffering of all those conditioned souls. And so, even though, yes, he gives us independence, but to the greatest extent, somehow possible, he does interfere, you can say. He does push the mercy onto us as much as possible. And we heard yesterday, one example for that is that he even goes to the extent of being ready from his side to lose everything, to give up everything, to if that somehow or other means that he can bring everyone to the shelter of his lotus feet, and thus to the shelter of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. And because, as we heard yesterday, there were, even though right from starting the Sankirtan movement, and as the Panchatattva, that they were flooding out the mercy, like so you hear this famous verse that Krishna came 5,000 years ago with the storehouse of love of Godhead, but he kept it sealed, kept the key, only for those who surrender unto him. But the Panchatattva, when they came, they broke open the seal and plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead, and after enjoying themselves, distributed it indiscriminately to everyone and anyone. So, which means that they gave it to all of those who are unqualified as well. But then, still, as we heard yesterday, there were still 6 classes who escaped the mercy of Mahaprabhu, who were adamant and not accepting the mercy. And for that purpose, then he even took sannyas to induce them, there's a sannyasi, so we offer respect to him, and thus the offenses will be vanquished, the offenses mentality. But even more than that, then we heard the only one of them who didn't surrender is the Mayavadis, still at that point, and for that purpose he personally went to Varanasi and induced them, as we see in this beautiful picture. Where is it? Yeah, right here. Sitting there and giving the Brahman effulgence, which is most attractive to them, and then inducing them to be kind to them and to listen to him, and then eventually also becoming devotees. So that is the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so which means, first of all, already right from the start he gives to the unqualified, and then he even went to the extent of pushing also all those who are not even interested to the uninterested people as well. And we fall into both those categories. And so from the beginning, we definitely don't deserve to be here, neither did we even desire in such a way, but still we got it. And then to think, I don't deserve it, and I didn't even desire, somehow I got the mercy. I'm lucky. I mean, obviously, we shouldn't think just like that, but then naturally we should have sincere desire to, at least in whatever insignificant way we can do, to also take up this mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and taking up the burden of wanting to share this mercy as much as we can. Okay, sorry, time is over. Thank you for your attention. Srimad Bhagavatam, Kantarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.